Everybody. We are going to begin the search for a caller chair. The October 2nd, 2013 Energy and the Environment Committee. We will begin with item number 1. If we can go ahead and have staff make their way to the center table here so that they present on item number 1, the Hyperion treatment plant item.
Ooh. Item number 1 relates to Board of Public Works report and final EIR relative to the Hyperion treatment plant digester gas utilization project.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Councilmember Fuentes, committee members. My name is Jim Marchese. I'm an assistant division manager with the Regulatory Affairs Division, Bureau of Sanitation, and I'm here to talk a little bit today about the environmental impact report on the Hyperion treatment plant digester gas utilization project. Today at the table with me is Mr. Omar Mogadam, who's the project director for this particular project.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have a brief PowerPoint presentation today, about 10 slides, give you a little bit of background on the project, talk a little bit about some of the project drivers and objectives, and the environmental impact report and assessment.
Very good. Before you begin, I just want to make an announcement to the audience that we will be continuing item number 7. We're waiting on some additional work for that item, so just for anybody who may be in the audience waiting on item number 7, we're going to continue that item. My apologies, please continue.
Okay. Excuse me for the technical delay here. You do have the handouts in front of you, so if we could proceed. The Bureau of Sanitation is in the business of transforming waste to resources. The project before us today, we evaluated in the final EIR, is the next in a long line of environmentally sound practices we employ out at the Hyperion treatment plant, where we transform wastewater to clean water. We separate the organics to make Class A biosolids for soil augmentation. And now we intend to use the digester gas evolved as part of the wastewater treatment plant process as a renewable fuel to produce power and steam. Sanitation serves about 4 million residents, including 27 contract cities with wastewater collection and treatment services. Located at El Segundo, the Hyperion treatment plant receives about 300 million gallons per day of wastewater. Associated with this wastewater is about 8 million standard cubic feet of digester gas. This gas is produced as part of the anaerobic digester process, where we decompose organic materials. And those are located in the egg-shaped digesters in the purple box on the facility. This is part of a larger gas handling process we have at that facility. Our current operation, the digester gas, is treated and ultimately utilized at the Scattergood power plant, which is located in the red box down at the bottom. It's combusted in large steam cycle turbine electrical power generators. These steam turbines require a large amount of supplemental natural gas to even get them to turn. The electricity and steam is then sent back to the Hyperion treatment plant for use in plant. And when the Scattergood equipment is down, we flare the digester gas in the flares located in the blue box on the facility. DWP has scheduled a termination of the Hyperion Scattergood power exchange arrangement for 2015, and this is when DWP intends to repower those particular steam turbines in accordance with SCA QMD, South Coast Air Quality Management District requirements. So the driver for our project is the termination of this agreement and the opportunity to use the digester gas at the Hyperion treatment plant. So we analyzed several new projects to accommodate the continued use of this digester gas. The proposed project, which is subject of the EIR analysis, which we have before us today, would be located on Hyperion in the existing building identified in the yellow box at the top of the facility here on the north end of the facility. Okay, so when we went out to seek solutions to gas handling at the Hyperion treatment plant, we set out 6 project objectives for handling the gas. One is to minimize the flare days, and this was part of an ongoing discussion we've had with the community and their concerns over flaring at the facility. The second was to meet 100% of the power and steam needs at the facility, to use 100% of the renewable gas produced as part of our process, to continue to make Class A biosolids for use, enable HTP to operate off the grid if necessary, and in order to meet NPDES National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System requirements for our permit as a backup source of power. So when we looked at several proposed projects, we identified what we need to provide the necessary changes to make Hyperion to make it self-sustaining or energy neutral, meaning all the energy contained in the wastewater will power all the treatment processes necessary to treat it to the clean standards that we require. And it will make the operation sustainable using renewable energy. So my team and I studied several projects over the past 2 years looking at renewable energy projects from both an environmental and an operational perspective. And for the last 9 months, we've been looking at combined heat and power. These are some illustrations of combined heat and power plants that are currently in service and the location that we would intend to place the proposed project. So when we looked at the combined heat and power project, we utilized an existing building that's already on the facility and an existing stack that will give the project a jump start to meet the deadlines that we are looking to satisfy. These are critical timelines. When DWP shuts down those turbines 1 and 2 for replacement, we're talking about December of 2015. It's a relatively short, compressed timeline to get this project in and commissioned. So when we looked at the EIR and the environmental assessment, we looked at 17 environmental focus areas. And as we completed our assessment, we separated these issues into several areas: no impact, less than significant, and potentially significant. Potentially significant required us to take a further look at what was required to address it in the analysis. So in the analysis, we took the most conservative protective approach, and that meant 2 things for us. One is we looked at the maximum build-out, which would foresee any future needs for energy that we would have at the facility and any additional programs that we would implement out there that would generate additional digester gas. So what that meant to us was about 16 million cubic feet per day generated or used in fuel throughput to meet the demands at Hyperion. This is still far less than what's currently being utilized at Scattergood to run the steam turbines out there, but it's well over what we consider the most likely operating scenario, which would be to meet the existing demand, which we think is somewhere in the range of 8 million cubic feet per day. So again, when we did the environmental impact analysis, we looked at the maximum footprint, the biggest project that we would think we would ever need at that facility. The second thing is we looked at this as a new source in the assessment, when in reality what's happening is the digester gas is already being utilized about 700 yards to the south at the Scattergood facility. So when we looked at the results of the assessment, the first thing that came out of the assessment was that all health risk indices were well below thresholds. In both evaluating the community impacts and evaluating worker exposure, they were all under health risk indices. There will be air and greenhouse gas emissions above thresholds, and these required us to take a closer look at the project to see if there were other design considerations that we could employ. We did employ best available control technology, and we continue to pursue those, including selective catalytic reduction for our emissions for criteria pollutants. We do know that this is a permittable project under local and state regulations, and as part of our ongoing discussions with AQMD, we have considered and included additional revisions to the project, which will be reflected in the final EIR. Again, we will utilize the existing building and stack to get a leg up on the project, if approved. So when we look at the project benefits then, compared to the existing condition where the gas is utilized at scattergood and outdated equipment, we'll see an increased amount of efficiency in power generation, a large reduction in the use of supplemental natural gas, which is required to turn the steam generators. Compared to the no project, where we would have to purchase electricity for continued operations, we will not be able to use a renewable fuel or seek renewable energy credits for that fuel. There may be visual impacts and noise from flaring, and there will be increased emission fees associated with this flaring as well. So with the cogeneration project, to wrap it up here, Hyperion Energy, it will make Hyperion facility energy neutral and sustainable, utilize 100% of the renewable energy generated at the facility, meet all the electrical and steam demands for the plant, comply with the MPDS permit requirements, and minimize flaring. So in conclusion, sanitation recommends that your committee forward this EIR and attendant documents to the council for EIR certification and project approval. Thank you.
Very good. Before we have any debate on the item, I do have one speaker card on the item. Let's go ahead and invite Tim McCosker up, representing Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. Tim McCosker with Mayor Brown representing Noresco. Noresco is one of the proposers on this project. You do not have the question of which proposer will actually be contracted with the city today. I want to just make it clear that we are supportive of the good work of the staff on the EIR. We would like to see the EIR certified, as we discussed below at the committee that has forwarded this to you, at the Public Works Commission that has forwarded this to you. We want to make it very clear that this EIR actually considers all of the alternatives, and one of those alternatives would be Noresco's proposal, which does have different technology, different outputs, more beneficial outputs actually on NOx. And I just wanted to make sure that in the record that we are here supportive of the EIR, but then this item will come back to you in due time. And Noresco remains very interested in this project and capable of meeting your deadlines and capable of negotiating and closing a contract in short order. And that's all.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. McCosker. Hearing and seeing no additional cards on the item, members, any questions for our panel? Mr. Kretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few concerns. One, well, a lot of it is related to air quality. Will there be a net increase or a net decrease in air pollution as compared to the current practices at Scattergood?
Omar Mughal, Director of Regulatory Affairs with the City of Los Angeles Bureau of Sanitation. I'll take your question, Councilman Koretz. And the answer is net decrease. One of the things that Jim didn't get the chance to express here, that the same volume of the gas that's been produced today and generates electricity will be generating 25% more electricity. So the footprint per volume of the gas is going to be decreased, definitely. And with the control of with the installation of the best available control technology for NOx and for CO, we have a substantial reduction of the criteria pollutants.
I mean, I guess the question is still about flaring. It appears that we'll still be flaring some of the gas.
I would say no. The reason Jim mentioned minimizing the flaring of the gas, it's our intent to eliminate the use of the flares at all times. But nevertheless, in other words, the project, the way it's envisioned, will eliminate the use of the flares altogether. But nevertheless, we have to be on the cautious side of the EIR, addressing that there will be situations that they may flares as an emergency, and the ultimate and the last resort will be utilized.
Do we have the ability to store the gas rather than flare it off, even in emergencies?
Unfortunately, just like we cannot store the wastewater that's coming down the pipe, the generation of the gas is continuous, and we do not have storage capacity and capabilities. And aside from that, we are close to a very, I would say, prominent and sometimes outspoken community of city of El Segundo, and we have always been cognizant of their needs, not wanting to store gas at all because of the safety issues. So we have tried to address the project in its largest footprint to eliminate, and I will emphasize on that, eliminate on the usage of the flares, but any flares will only be utilized as an ultimate situation if there are no other avenues for utilization of the digester gas.
So we expect that ultimately when this project is built, we really think this will eliminate flaring entirely.
This will eliminate flaring except the emergency situations that flares must be used.
And how often do you think that kind of situation comes up? Once every 3 months or once every 10 years? Do you have a sense of?
Councilman, but what we know that the guarantees that's coming from all of our vendors at the minimum is 95% online availability, and during the remaining 5% of the time we'll be utilizing the gas in our boilers. So flares is, I mentioned that is ultimate. I would say emergency flare using wind or no other means of burning the gas. But nevertheless, we have the cogen or CH combined heat and power, the digester gas utilization project, as the main user of the digester gas. And then we have boilers as a second layer of it. And then ultimately, if all those things will go away, to answer your question, less than 15 days in a year total, but nevertheless, a large portion of the gas, even in those 15 years, will be utilized in the boilers, existing boilers.
So what do we think the actual impact is on the air quality of the days where it needs to be flared and in a relative emergency? I mean, is there a way to quantify it?
I must say that when the project is built in its fullest scale, means 3 engines instead of 2, we will completely eliminate the use of the flares.
Okay, thank you.
Completely.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to understand a little bit better about the mitigation monitoring reporting program. If you could detail that a little bit, and what mitigations are we really talking about?
Sure. The MMRP, Jim Marchese Sanitation, includes the mitigation measure to monitor the fuel usage and throughput on the facility, and to optimize that at a 90%, 10% natural gas supplement blend, and upon exceedances of the 10% to identify the reasons and the needs for that demand, and to report back to the city what that would mean.
And as far as the monitoring system on the cogen facility or dig-up facility, there are, we call them SEMS, Continuous Emission Monitoring System, that analyzes NOx, CO, SOx, and other criteria pollutants continuously. And those are all reportable to South Coast Air Quality Management District.
Okay, and that's the sum total of what we're talking about?
100.
Because when you think about mitigations, you think about all sorts of other potential things as well.
Right. We've incorporated a lot of the mitigation already into the project design. As we indicated earlier, the best available control technology has already been implemented. Selective catalytic reduction will be placed on the facility to reduce NOx emissions.
And if I may add to that, all the 17 focus areas that Jim mentioned earlier, each and every one of them has been analyzed, and mitigation measures has been addressed for those things, for noise, for vibration, for visible flame, for plume, for opacity, for traffic, and on and on. There are 17 criteria that's been addressed.
Even though it's less than what's going on currently on some of those things.
Still, we have to have plans for those
You
things.
have plans. So what are those types of plans? Like,
As an example, traffic plan. We have heavy equipment being delivered to the facility, and there are actually 115 people, will be 115 or 150 people, and I will get the numbers from the back of the room, that they'll be working during construction. So we will make sure that there will be additional parking available at the beach side to make sure that there will be proper commuting of the labor that they're going to be working out there for this facility. In addition to that, there will be some minor readjustment that we will be doing in the routing of our trucks that move the biosolids out. So as a result of this, we have prepared the traffic plan for the incorporation of this project during the construction period.
So the traffic and the noise and
I will go through the air quality, noise, vibration, visible flame, opacity, traffic, help me out. The 17 criteria.
There are all those things.
Yeah, that's
there are
right.
different mitigation
That's
measures
right.
that have been put forward for all of them.
Aesthetic, I forgot to mention aesthetic because that is very important. Jim mentioned that we will be using existing stack. We will not be building any new stack. And that in itself was one of the promises that we made to the community of El Segundo, that there will not be any major constructions outside the existing buildings.
So talk to me a little bit about sort of the energy here. Well, before we do that, since we're talking about Vox, SOx, NOx, all that dirty stuff, the site is inherently, Hyperion, the operation has high emissions, notwithstanding sort of what we're talking about here, right? I mean, it's a site that has an emissions issue.
Well, not really. And in fact, over the course of last 20 years, we have made, I would say, leaping progress in reducing the emissions from the VOCs, as you may have heard. And if you wish to take a tour of the facility, we have over 28 scrubbers scrubbing the odors, as an example. For every one of the emission sources, we have means of addressing the control of the volatile organic compounds, reactive organic gases, ROGs, and in this particular case, because combustion is coming back, in other words, we will be bringing gas back from Scattergood after 20 years. This is the same gas that's being utilized at Scattergood next door, and there are emissions of NOx, SOx, and SCO, and VOCs and else. But if we address, well, I don't mind addressing to you that for every one of these criteria pollutants that we mentioned here, there are some control measures that's incorporated into the project. And those are not only below the threshold, way below the threshold that's been prescribed in our permits. In other words, I will pick up one that Mr. Tim McCosker brought up, and that was the NOx. The threshold is 25 ppm. All the proposals that's been considered here all been equipped with the best available control technology for control of NOx.
So I guess just so to bifurcate the issue, so you're going to be utilizing the same volume of gas, right? You've got the same output at Hyperion.
At 25% larger increase in output.
Output of electricity.
Output of energy that's generated.
So the gas volume is
Same.
Same.
That's right.
And so you're going to have a 25% increase in output in energy.
Because of higher efficiency of the cycle that
And
will
so
be
rather
incorporated.
than it being generated at Scattergood, the emissions are going to be shifted over to Hyperion.
Hyperion.
So relative to Scattergood, is there a net increase or a net reduction in emissions?
Major net reduction
Relative to Scattergood?
relative to Scattergood.
Okay. And so you're getting more efficient to the 25% more efficiency. So you'll be operating at 125%, basically, sort of in terms of energy output.
That's right.
Okay.
Today we are generating 18 megawatts of the amount of the volume of the gas. That will increase to 25 to 27 megawatts.
That was exactly my next question. So from a megawatt perspective, you're going to get up to about 24, 25 megawatts output.
Up to 27, yes, sir.
Up to 27. How much, and ideally there will be little to no need for flaring because you'll have 3 turbines, I'm guessing, and if you have to do service, you'll have a way to sort of mitigate that with the boiler operation, unless we're down and then we have a problem.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. So how much on-site electrical need is there at Hyperion today?
Today's need is 20 to 21 megawatts of electricity, but with ancillary power of the dig-up project, means additional compressors, additional cooling water, is going to be right around 23 megawatts. And as Jim mentioned, and we are just discussing it, the generation capability from dig-up, digested gas utilization project, it meets and exceeds that demand.
Okay. And so 2 questions for you, well, more than 2 questions. So the difference, the delta between sort of what you need on site and the excess, is that going to be offset onto the DWP lines, onto the grid, or what happens when Tillman starts sort of sending you more work to the system?
Very good. Great question. First of all, we are at the midst of the negotiations or discussions with our friends at the Department of Water and Power to see how much credit will be accrued as a result of the exportation of few hundred kilowatt hours above and beyond the plant demand. and what kind of net metering can take place in case we are importing it. That's situations that, even for Hyperion, using those 15 days that I mentioned earlier on.
So to me, and I know that we're talking about the EIR here, but the accounting to me is going to be important, whether we're looking at a feed-in tariff rate sort of, or a net metering rate. I mean, I think that's going to, especially since we're doing business with ourselves. I mean, presumably the Department of Water and Power and Sanitation, I understand, are different agencies, but that accounting is going to be important to me because it seems like it's a good thing what we're doing here. We've got additional efficiencies, we're increasing our output, and we're minimizing, I think, sort of the impact, it sounds, from a sort of emissions perspective, which I think is really, really good. But the additional sort of concern that I have is with scattergood, because I'm not familiar, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm getting up to date on this stuff. So scattergood then will be repowered, so we'll start generating at Hyperion. What happens to scattergood? I know it's a DWP question, but...
That's right. I don't want to get into their plans, but since I'm aware of what the plans are, scattergood number 3 is going through repowering as we speak. Actually, the construction has begun in the last couple of months or so. And as soon as means Bureau of Sanitation, has built this project, dig-up project, we'll give them a notice to proceed with whatever demolition they need to do with the scattergood number 1 and 2, as their plans are. Well, we know that none of the scattergood units will be capable of receiving digester gas in the near future, or at least foreseeable future in the next decade. So as such, we must have the dig-up project in place before advising them of taking units 1 and 2 down.
Absolutely understand that. I guess where I want to sort of understand, so scattergood at some point will be repowered, and that will have an emissions impact.
That's correct.
And so in the aggregate, scattergood and Hyperion, will there be, and again, I realize it's a DWP question, but I think to get to the spirit of what Mr. Koretz was, I think, trying to get to here, is there, once we have both sort of locations up and running, is there a net increase at that point of emissions? And does the EIR that's before us today speak to sort of the aggregate impact of scattergood and Hyperion?
No, sir. That's why Jim, he put the boundaries around Hyperion. We are going from a no emission to emissions associated with the dig-up project and related to the volume of the gas that's been generated at Hyperion. We have to utilize this gas and mitigate this gas.
Absolutely.
And as Mr. Koretz mentioned, in fact, look at the blue box, the close proximity of flares to the community. The health risk associated with that is much, much larger than utilizing the gas. And that's why we are emphasizing on building a project and eliminating the flaring of the gas altogether with the implementation of this project. And I hope I'm answering your question. But going back to aggregate, no, I'm not here to, first of all, we do not know what kind of emissions will be coming out of the future scattergood at this time. I'm not privy to that information. That's why if that question come up, they need to address it at a later time when they put their EIR out to address the cumulative impact of the regional impact of the scattergood.
The reason I ask is only because my absolute desire would be with whatever retrofit happens at scattergood and whatever retrofit we end up doing here at Hyperion, that we try as best we can to have the most efficient sort of operation so that we can minimize the impact in the aggregate, cumulatively speaking. Because I understand that we have to deal with the biogas, and this sounds like the right way to deal with it, but with the repurposing of a scattergood, there's going to be an increase. And understanding that the elimination of flaring will help reduce some of the impacts, the goal would be to sort of stay underneath the existing, if not beat the emissions sort of that we have in total.
And adding to all of your great comments, it's the improvement in the efficiencies. Today, as I said, for the same volume gas, we are just getting 17 megawatts.
Right.
These are with rather outdated, aging units from 1950s, 1940s, and 1950s, and that generation capability will increase by at least 25% to the measure.
Very good. All right, colleagues, if there isn't any additional questions or concerns, I would like to move this item favorably out of committee, if that's okay with everybody. Unanimously, the item is out. Thank you so much for your presentation. We will now move on to item 2. Raphael, I won't do your job. My apologies for the first time around. Item 2.
Certainly. No, it's fine. Item number 2.
That's efficiency for you.
City Administrative Officer report relative to proposed First Amendments to 7 contracts for on-call emergency repair services. at the wastewater treatment plants. And these contracts are set to expire, I believe, on October 7th.
All righty. I don't know if your microphone is on there, but we can barely
hear you.
Okay.
All right. Your microphone is on, miss.
Good.
Very good. Item 2, you are?
Alma Gibson with the CAO's office. As Rafael was trying to say, we are submitting a report to you recommending a 3-year contract term extension, amendment number 1, for 7 on-call contractors, which will provide emergency repair services and construction of urgent necessity projects at the city's wastewater treatment plants and other wastewater facilities. The term of the agreements are requested to be extended for an additional 3 years to October 7, 2016. The reason being is that there are currently 2 active projects still being performed and will be completed beyond the current 5-year contract term until approximately September 2014, I believe. Therefore, this term extension will provide sufficient time to complete their current existing work and also provide BOE with the ability to solicit on-call emergency services when needed, while a new on-call contractor list gets established. The Board of Public Works has approved this contract amendment number 1 for the 7 contracts. The contracts make no guarantee of work, and compensation for services will be provided on a negotiated and agreed-upon lump sum basis when the work is required. No additional funding will be required since the project's wastewater funds will be used to pay for these services, and council approval is requested for this first contract amendment.
Very good. Thank you for the presentation. There aren't any speaker cards. Mr. Blumenfield, do you have any questions or concerns?
No.
Thank you.
Has no impact on the general fund.
No impact
I
whatsoever.
do have one sort of just question. It's not a terrible one here, I hope. Is there anybody from the Public Works Commission or representing them? I am certain that these companies are all amazing, very good potential contractors, but only one of them resides in the, 2 of them reside in the city of Los Angeles, it looks like. Is there any effort to try to increase the participation of Los Angeles-based businesses who pay business tax licenses that we talked about in council today? Is there a way to grow that list a little bit?
That's
or
a very
get these
good
people
question.
to move into Los Angeles?
Maybe provide some incentives, that's true. That's a good question. That is one of the things that we are requesting for the Bureau of Engineering to make sure they look into when they start soliciting new bids.
Sure.
To try to entice companies, or try to see if we could get companies within the city of Los Angeles to bid.
And again, I'm certain that they're amazing companies, but to the extent that we can figure out how to get 30% of the list or 40% of the list,
Right.
for, Los Angeles-based businesses, they don't even have to be from CD7. They could just be from Los Angeles.
Just from the valley.
Or from the Valley, yeah. They could just be residing in Los Angeles or pay a voluntary business tax, something. I'm happy to move the item forward if there's any.
Thank you. We'll communicate that desire to the
I
Bureau.
appreciate it. Thank you
Yes.
very much. That item is out of committee.
Okay.
Item number 3.
Item number 3, Public Works report relative to adoption of rates needed to implement the agency wastewater service agreements for fiscal year 2013-14. Staff from the Bureau of Sanitation as well.
Step on up. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Dale Burgoyne. I'm an assistant division manager of the Financial Management Division in the Bureau of Sanitation. We have 49 agencies located outside the city limits that we bill for wastewater service. It turns out to be a little more than 10% of the total wastewater comes from these agencies. In the late 90s, we negotiated what we called amalgamated agreements with 20 of these agencies, and it was a long and tedious and difficult negotiation. But we have since then done this for quite a number of years and don't really have that many problems with the agencies. One thing during our negotiations, they wanted a little bit more assurance that the rates which we use to charge them had some blessing by the City Council. And that's the purpose of this this legislation here, is to gain that. And so we send board reports to the board to send this on to you to consider adopting them for charging our agencies.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions? Mr. Koretz.
So what are the charges based on? How do you come to these?
Okay, we have 2 main charges. And one of them is called the Amalgamated System Sewer Service Charge, and it's analogous to the sewer service charge that we use for our internal customers. The other is the Amalgamated System Sewerage Facilities Charge, which is analogous to our sewerage facilities charge used for new development inside the city. What we do with the Amalgamated System Sewerage Service Charge, the name was unfortunate, I've regretted it ever since, is we project costs based on our capital improvement program and our budget, and divide that by the previous year's flow and strength values to come up with these rates. And then we use them to charge during the year that they're of service, so they're basically billed 6 times a year. Every other month they get a bill, or actually they pay every other month. And then after the end of the year, we take our actual costs and our actual flows and strengths and recalculate their charges and either give them a credit or charge them some more to make up the difference. So in a way, for the Amalgamated System Sewer Service Charges, the rates which will be adopted by council are really just temporary, because ultimately they're going to be charged based on actual costs. Now, for the Amalgamated System Sewerage Facilities Charge, we calculate those rates based on the fixed assets, the past investment in the wastewater system, and those costs are included in the fixed asset system used for the audit report for the wastewater fund. So they're firm, but we don't do a reconciliation afterwards. So they send in the Amalgamated System Sewerage Facility Charges as development occurs inside the agencies, and that's it. They just pay. There's no reconciliation later.
Thank you.
Mr. Blumenfield.
It's what's interesting. You do it based on actual costs rather than sort of market rates. I mean,
That's true. In this business, particularly because we got grants from the federal government years ago, for the sewer service charges, we can't charge them based on market rates. In fact, they're charged, each agencies are charged basically similarly to the internal customers.
Right.
And so as costs go up for the internal customers, they also go up for other agencies. There are some differences in the service they receive, but basically they're charged similarly to the internal customers.
and presumably the larger economies of scale benefit everybody, or is that not relevant? I mean,
yes, there is larger economies of scale because we serve the agencies. I mean, it's only 10 or 11%, so it's not huge. But yes, and they take advantage of the fact that, we have the largest plants in the country, I believe, and have great economies of scale. And so, yes, they benefit from that. We don't take that into account specifically in setting these rates or in determining these rates.
so theoretically, we could be charging them a lot more, not that we should be, especially because of the federal.
Well, if they had their own plants, which is probably really impractical for them, it would cost them a lot more because we have huge economies of scale in our large plant, Hyperion plant.
Right.
And so, yes, if we did this on some sort of basis, well, you could be paying a lot more, so we'll charge you more. I don't think that would not be consistent with the Clean Water Act. It wouldn't be allowed by that act.
Do you think it would be prohibited by law to
Yes.
charge a market rate?
Yeah, we would.
And just out of curiosity, have you done comparisons to market rates, what other cities charge for these kinds of things?
Not in charging our contract agencies. We do some comparisons with our internal charges with other agencies, and they're relatively low in comparison, particularly if we pick and choose Atlanta and San Francisco, which have really high rates and makes us look really good. But we're sort of in the middle of the pack.
It might be useful information not to charge these other cities more, but just as we negotiate a whole plethora of things with other cities, that we can point out the fact that we're giving them a great deal on these particular things, and then when we're negotiating a whole series of things in our relationships with Burbank and Santa Monica and other things, we can at least have moral leverage of some sort.
Yeah, now I'm getting it. With the council, there's other issues besides wastewater service. And some of these agencies have in fact looked at what it would cost to provide their own service, or in one case to connect to the county sanitation district's system and have their wastewater treated at the Carson plant. In those cases, they've discovered, and we could have told them all along, that their costs would increase dramatically by leaving our system. If Santa Monica had its own plant, which I'm not sure is even practical from a regulatory perspective, it would cost them a whole lot more because the plant would be little, and the economies of scale just would not be there. So I think they're aware of it.
It'd be nice for us to be aware of that.
Yeah, I understand that, and I'm trying to think how we can do this. Maybe we could figure out cost of service for some other small treatment plants and do a little comparison, see how that is with our costs. You know it's going to be more, but how much we would have to investigate. We will look at that.
Thank you.
Just curiosity, so is the amalgamated system sewer system facilities charge, does that go down every year?
It sometimes goes down, sometimes goes up.
Because it's a fixed asset and the depreciation involved with it, does that?
That's true. If it were only depreciation, it would go down. However, we also have new facilities that we're constructing, and that makes it go up. So it all depends on the magnitude of our capital program.
And
it'll probably go up the next number of years because our capital program is ramping up.
Are these charges higher than they were last year?
I don't know. I'd have to look at that.
Okay. Very good. All right, members, any additional questions? Hearing and seeing none, the item is out unanimously. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, item number 4.
Item number 4, Public Works Report relative to authority to accept $175,000 in grant funding from the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Review Committee's 2011-12 Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Funding Opportunities Program. Wow. Staff from the Bureau of Sanitation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, committee members. Javier Polanco, Division Manager of Bureau of Sanitation. I wanted to acknowledge my very modest staff, Dr. Kim Tran and Ismail Longtalk, for all their efforts in obtaining grant funding over the past decade. It's exceeded $26 million to help support our collection fleet and fueling infrastructure. So with that, I'll have Dr. Kim Tran give you a background staff report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and council members. My name is Kim Tran. I'm an environmental supervisor with the Solid Resource Support Services Division, Bureau of Sanitation. I would like to present the following staff report regarding our request for your authority here. Since 2000, the Bureau of Sanitation has been implementing a clean fuel program to convert our fleet of diesel power collection vehicles to clean fuel natural gas. On March 8, 2012, the City of Los Angeles Council adopted a resolution, Council File 11-0527, authorizing the Director of the Bureau of Sanitation or designee to apply for external grant funding opportunities for the Bureau's Clean Fuel Program. In response, the Bureau staff has identified several external grant opportunities and submitted applications to seek funding from these programs. Recently, we were notified by the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Review Committee, also known as MSRC, that the Bureau has been selected for a grant funding award in the amount of $175,000 towards the construction of a new CNG fueling station at the Bureau's West Los Angeles Collection District Yard, located at 2027 South Stoner Avenue, Los Angeles. The Bureau, therefore, is requesting your approval to execute this grant contract and to accept the grant funding in the amount of $175,000 for the construction of a new CNG fueling station at the West Los Angeles Collection District Yard. This concludes our staff report, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Very good. Thank you for getting the $175,000. Good work. Members, any questions? Shall we accept, Mr. Koretz, shall we accept the money?
I'd accept the money.
All right.
But I do have... I do have a general concern that seems appropriate to express here, which is that we're spending over $5 million on a refueling station that uses natural gas. And I know that will clean up our air and clean up NOx and carbon emissions and others. But as I think we're starting to realize natural gas can have its own environmental problems that it causes, from seismic issues to groundwater contamination. And I'm wondering if we've looked at all on the fact that our clean fuel program could be clean at all stages of the life of the materials that we use, and whether we're looking at a later point moving away from fossil fuels entirely. Have we looked at that?
Regarding the use of natural gas, we would like to respond to that the Bureau has, since the 2000, as I mentioned, we implemented the program over 10 years, and during that 10 years, we don't see any incident or any safety that jeopardize our operations. And also, the South Coast Air Quality Management District is the lead air quality agency in the region, and they mandate us to follow the Fleet Rule 1193, which required our fleet to run on the alternative fuel. And right now, the natural gas is the only clean fuel that recognized and have the engine available to run our operation.
Do we have the technology yet to convert to our vehicles at some point to fully electric?
There are technologies available, but those are only applicable to like light duty and medium duty. But for heavy duty solid resource collection vehicles or solid waste collection vehicles, natural gas is the only type of fuel that for which engines is available. And in fact, there is only one type of engines available.
Should we be looking at that as a goal that we set further out for when those technologies do become available?
Yes, the Bureau is open to any type of technologies that help us not just only to go to like a clean fuel, but also diversify the fuel so that in the future we have issue with one type of fuel that we are flexible enough that enable us to go to different directions.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you so much for your presentation. We'll take the $175,000 and unanimously approve the item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5.
Item number 5, Mr. Chair, DWP report relative to proposed fiber optic network lease agreement with the University of Southern California. We have staff from the Department of Water and Power and the CAO.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Matt Lamp, Chief Information Officer, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power.
Ken Kinsey, Director of Fiber Optic Enterprise, DWP.
Olivia Sevis-Val-Lunga from the City Administrative Office.
And Olivia, a Trojan, right?
Yes, let's not talk about it.
I knew it. You know your chair is a Bruin. Let me see here. This authorizes for the University of Southern California.
Or, yeah.
Coincidence?
We fired
Olivia?
our coach.
I don't think so. All right, let's go ahead and hear about authorizing this short form IRU-18 lease agreement.
Okay, so to put it mildly, we have a master contract agreement with USC for fiber optics. This is essentially a renewal of one of their short lease agreements of an individual sets of fiber that one has expired. There's some consolidation of some previous ones into this new lease agreement. It's priced based on our current pricing structure, which we just had a third-party review of. And it's an important service we provide to particularly a lot of the educational institutions in terms of them helping connect their various facilities around LA.
This program was a result of a consultant report that said the Department of Water and Power should look for sources of revenue. And because the department has available to it fiber optic within their distribution system that could be used and has been used since that consultant report to different companies, including CBS and all these other people who want to lease our fibers. And so this is part of that program. And USC has been using it for the smart grid and other things. USC communications students use it. And so it's become a place not only to learn about new technologies, but to actually use them and test them and become pilots. And we sometimes use grants like the grant that was given for work within the federal government, to start programs that would be useful to the public, and Smart Grid was one of them. So they use it for phone communications and fiber optics. And this is just renewing the ones that were going to expire.
Very good. My fellow Bruin?
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you provide the same service to UCLA.
Yes, we do, as a matter of fact.
They are one of our customers. We have both educational institutions, hospitals, a lot of use within the entertainment industry to connect their various pre-production and production facilities who rely on our fiber.
We support LA in all its forms.
And just for the record, that wasn't really a serious question.
Okay. Mr. Blumenfield, aren't you also a Bruin? You're at your B school?
I'm a Bruin at B School, but I did some work at Annenberg School of Communications, so I consider myself a Trojan and a Bruin.
See, so he can do both.
Come on, we were ganging up on him. Yeah.
Just an important note, we're going to make $3.3 million over the 10 years of these three.
Thank you, Olivia. Members, any additional questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, the item is approved unanimously. Thank you. Go Bruins.
I said we fired our coach.
Item number 6.
Number 6, DWP report relative to membership in the Water Research Foundation for calendar years 2013 through 2015. Staff from Department of Water and Power and the CAO as well.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Milad Degabi. I'm the Assistant Director of Water Quality Division for Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to come and brief you on this partnership that we have had with the Water Research Foundation since 1986. It's a great opportunity, enables the department to access scientific research, unbiased research that will help us advance our technologies for clean up water, or improving our infrastructure. And because it's independent and it's very credible, it provides the basis as we go talk to the community with regard to what steps the department is going to be taking in different venues. The Department of Water and Power has been a member of the Water Research Foundation since 1986. Since 1986, there has been 116 research that the Department of Water and Power has benefited from. If the Department of Water and Power was to do those research through its own funding, would have cost roughly about $43 million. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have regarding this proposal. Just one note to make, it's we used to come in on a yearly basis for this membership. Last year it was decided that we should go on a 3-year contract, and that's what you have in front of you. It has 2 components in it. One is the membership fee, which is based on the amount of the water that the Department of Water and Power sells, and the other part is for independent studies that we may want to do in addition to other activities that Water Research Foundation's going to be doing. Water Research Foundations receives money from roughly about 950 other utilities, and we provide sometimes in addition to the funding, in-kind services for certain studies that needs to be conducted for either improving water quality, infrastructure, or other areas.
Members, any questions? Mr. Kretz.
I'm curious exactly what we get for the $1.5 million. Do they study local LA issues, like how to build up our own local water supply? Do they study issues that sometimes aren't relevant to us?
Yes, absolutely. We won't be paying otherwise for their service. As an example, a few years ago, as some of the council members may recall, we had a tremendous problem with pipe breaks throughout the city. So that was one of the studies that they performed. The recent studies that they have performed for us and we have benefited for as part of the collective process has been on climate change. They also have looked at some corrosion issues for us in terms of reduce that so our customers at the tap will have a much better water quality at their disposal. There should be part of your attachment, there should be a list of recent projects that has been completed by the Water Research Foundation that has benefited the Department of Water and Power. We also looking at, should meets with your approval and it gets moved forward to the City Council to do some couple other additional studies with them Councilman Kurtz, you pointed out the groundwater quality and the issue with potential use of fossil fuel, for example, in the prior item. We're looking at the groundwater cleanup. We're looking at quite a bit of endeavor to address the contaminations within San Fernando Basin. One of the things that we're going to be asking the Water Research Foundation to look for us is that the United States Environmental Protection Agency is looking at regulating carcinogen VOCs as a family versus right now it's done on individual basis, and see what kind of an impact that will have in terms of treatment. So that's one of the items that we'll be looking for this study to be conducted by the Water Research Foundation.
Now, you mentioned $43 million. Is
Yes.
that what it would have cost to do these studies over the time we've been a member, or is that
That's
a yearly cost?
That's for the 116 studies. I'm sorry, I don't have the information in terms of which year all of those things has occurred, but if we were to do 116 studies with the caliber of scientific research and staff that were involved, it would have cost $43 million. It's not since 1986. It's based on the number of studies that they have performed that the City of Los Angeles and Department of Water and Power has benefited from.
But would that start in 1986? Because I'm wondering, it looks like if you took a $1.5 million annual fee and you work that out from 1986 to currently, it wouldn't be that much more to do all those studies ourselves, and
Absolutely.
it adds up to roughly the same number.
Absolutely.
$500,000 a year, isn't it?
Yes, what it is that what you have in here is two components. If we don't ask them to do, there is a study that is done as a group of utilities. That will be covered by the membership fee. And the membership, as I mentioned, we sometimes is paid only $33,000 for the membership fee. It all depends on the amount of water that we sell. So when we're in a drought and we buy a significant amount of water from the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, our payment is very little because this is the water that we bought from them. We don't pay twice for that. They're also a member. And the $250,000 not to exceed $250,000, if there's a particular special studies that we want to do and we are unable to find other partners to finance that through the Water Research Foundation. So our payment historically has been between $33,000 to roughly $200,000 or $300,000. These are the good years when we have tons of water, wet years coming in from Eastern Sierra and other resources. So it's not quite, can be differentiated in that fashion. We are very cognizant of the benefit for these studies, and if we are not getting the benefits, we will not be participating in those.
Well, there's a couple I'd want to ask you about whether we've done or asked about or not. One is the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, which obviously there are many billions of dollars at stake. Have we individually or as a group asked for them to study that? Its impact?
I'm not aware of that request, Council Member, but we have asked them to take a look at the climate change, and that's one of the studies that they did for us in about 2007, if I remember correctly. And that looked at what the reliance of the water would be, how much water we would be getting. One of the, for example, as an example, was that we won't have the same snowpack. It will more come through in terms of the more rain. So where are we going to keep that water? When the water starts coming down, where are we going to store it? So from that perspective, it was looked at, but I could definitely go back and see whether a request has been made by our Water Resources Division with regard to the Bay Delta and report back to the committee.
Okay, that seems worthwhile. The other thing I wonder is if anyone has ever taken a look at the dangers to our local water supply of fracking and how that might impact the water quality.
We do contact the good folks in the Water Research Foundation for their technical advice, and it may not be that there's any result of any studies, but I know we are in contact with them. We very closely monitoring the fracking proposal, which was recently approved at the state level. And we had quite a bit of, in terms of suggestions for improving the legislation when it was first proposed. such as we were much concerned about the disclosure of the chemicals that may be used as part of fracking, and trying to make sure that there is enough notification to public utilities such as us if the fracking is taking place and what chemicals may be, so we would be able to monitor that for those chemicals. The department monitors significant in terms of water collection and sample collections and analysis. We collect roughly about 25,000 samples every single day of the year, and we conduct roughly about 500,000 tests on 250,000 tests, 250,000 tests on those water samples for a host of different constituents, over 200 of them. And so we're monitoring those elements, and if there's something new is being introduced, we would like to definitely know about it and then see what kind of a test can be performed to let us know if that is coming in or is entering our water supply system.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because there's a lot of debate on the issue of whether or not fracking has a significant impact on water quality. It seems like having an objective assessment of that from this organization might be helpful to us as policymakers.
Fracking, if it's done correctly, it should have very little, if any, impact on water quality. The issue comes in if the proper reporting is done and proper safeguards are put in place. The issue will come in if there's a companies out there that puts the profit ahead of everything else and wants to do something very quickly and doesn't follow the procedures, then that might be an issue. For example, if we are advised of a fracking taking place within the city of Los Angeles, currently it's my understanding that no fracking has taken place within the city of Los Angeles. If it is, then we're going to be looking at our network of monitoring system around those locations to see if we see something that's indicative of that operation. And then if there is, then we're going to be asking for the good folks, and hopefully they have a large bank account to pay for the remediation that would be necessary.
Well, I've heard your opinion. I'm just wondering if we might be able to get a more objective viewpoint from this organization.
We definitely could go back, council member, and see what has been already been published regarding this issue, and see if there is some other report that we may be able to provide to you.
Thank you.
I get a little turnaround in the conversation about the amounts. 280,000 per year, but the total amount is 1.5.
Yes, it's.
Let me clarify this. I'm Robert Roth with the CIO's office. You're correct. The amount for the membership fee, the subscription part of this fee is 250,000, 280,000. I'm sorry, per year. And then there's an additional amount that's up to 250,000 for special studies. These are the custom requests that the department would have, and
so that's how we get to the 1.5.
That's how we get to the 530.
530 per year times 3. Okay.
Yes, sir.
That makes sense to me. Thank you. Are we the biggest contributor to the foundation?
No. My understanding, we are the Metropolitan Water of Southern California is the biggest one. And part of this, the other cities are nearby cities. I believe Burbank, Glendale, all those are a member of this. And we each participate or share in terms of membership is based on the water that is sold.
So we would be number 2, probably.
I don't have that information, Councilman, but in Southern California, potentially, but this is a national organization, so I don't know what other utilities are.
Do we have any relationship on the terms of being a board seat or anything like that on the foundation board, or is it completely independent?
It's completely independent. There is, from time to time, I believe department has had representatives under trustees, and currently, I believe, and I will double check that, is Dr. Pankaj Parak is one of the trustees. He's serving from 2011 to 2014. His term will end. Dr. Pankaj Parak is a member of Department of Water and Power.
Well, and The last thing is just, I like that you're asking them about groundwater cleanup in the San Fernando Valley, and those are important questions. Just want to reiterate that, so thanks.
Yeah, I'll be the third on that. I know that you mentioned, and I have to imagine that the requests for service and the requests for additional studies are based on the actual need that the department has. So to the extent that we can help prioritize sort of the work that you all are requesting to be done, I have to imagine that the San Fernando Valley water remediation, groundwater remediation has to rise to the top there. So to the extent that you can help us understand what the latest, greatest progress is in trying to remediate the contamination that is literally valley-wide, that would be really helpful. And maybe at some point you can come back and help us understand sort of what, again, what the latest, greatest is towards fixing that.
Absolutely. As a side note, in addition to the Water Research Foundation, we'll definitely take that question back to them. Department of Water and Power is conducting an $11.5 million study on the groundwater contamination. And we hope to have some good results to share with the council and the community and the public in next year, hopefully, that will enable us to, we're doing a few things right now. We are characterizing the water quality, so we've been collecting a tremendous amount of water quality samples and testing them for over 300 constituents to comply with the Department of Public Health. Those results should be coming in next year. And based on that, we will be able to propose to the Department of Public Health a series of treatment processes that we would think would be appropriate for addressing the contamination, and then start the permitting process for those facilities. So in addition to the Water Research Foundation, that other study has been ongoing since 2009, and in 2014 and 2015 we will benefit from the fruit of that investment, with the studies coming in at the stages that then we could be shared with the community.
Will the study address the cost?
Yes, it will.
Very good. Members, any additional questions, comments, concerns? The item is unanimously approved. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
I want to remind the members of the audience that item number 7 will be continued until the next meeting, and hearing and seeing no additional business before us, that adjourns this meeting. Thank you.